Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about, being practical in what we are doing. People are always saying silly stuff like they're trying to isolate a muscle, and really there's no evidence. And in fact, all the evidence to the contrary is that even if you could isolate a muscle, it doesn't actually improve muscle growth. Okay, we want to be very, very clear there. In fact, the evidence that we do have, if we were to go purely off the evidence, no one would ever even mention such a thing. Because number one, you can't do it. It's impossible. Number two, we simply find that how many muscles are involved in a lift doesn't really affect the stimulus or muscle growth of the muscle you may be trying to work. So what's the practical solution? When you're doing your exercises, try to do them in a way and pick exercises that work the muscle in the way that you want to work it. In other words, don't worry about, am I using other muscles with it? Right? Don't worry about that. Worry about, am I working the muscle the way that I want to work it? And that's a better way to think about it. In other words, you saw me doing those skull crushers there. Well, there's still other muscles involved. But why am I doing the skull crusher? Well, I'm doing those because it stretches the long head, right? It puts it into a lengthened position. It stretches that part of the tricep that maybe doesn't get worked as much on bench pressing and other stuff, okay? But, the thing is, you look at the bench press. The bench press is superior to any form of extension for the lateral head. If we go off of biomechanics and we go off of the studies looking at actual muscle growth, people's lateral head of their tricep grows more from bench pressing than it does from any type of extension you can come up with, right? It doesn't matter that the chest is involved. It doesn't matter that the anterior deltoids are involved. It doesn't matter that they may be the primary movers. Lateral head is still going to get some amazing stimulation that you can't quite seem to get from most extensions. Kind of see where we're going here, guys? All right. So instead of worrying about, do I need to try to isolate that muscle? Well, no. I mean, obviously the lateral head's being grown from all the pressing. So then I'm looking at another movement and saying, well, if I'm going to go add this other exercise, let's maybe use an exercise that works the long head a little bit better, right? So we want to work that muscle in a way through its function. Looking what's the tricep actually doing, and just saying, okay, well, I'm going to do this extension. It's going to work this, and then between these couple of things, all the pressing and then maybe doing that skull crusher, maybe my triceps will actually grow. But it's not because you're trying to isolate it. And really, what should we be looking at when we're talking about really developing a muscle? Well, we should be working it through a good range of motion, and we should be working it through the ranges of motion that give it the most stimulus. Well, that's generally going to be into a lengthened position. You want muscles to stretch. So instead of saying, should I be trying to isolate? It's like, well, no, how about we just worry about stretching the tricep? Now, a case could be made for behind the head stuff too, to get rid of all that standing stuff, because those are great exercises for the long head. Some people's shoulders are not good for them. For me right now, they're not really doable while I'm rebuilding my shoulder mobility and health, okay? But for people who can do them, those can work pretty well if your shoulders are healthy. All right, same thing. You guys see me doing these deep pause squats, right? Doing these deep pause squats. Why? Because they stretch the quads. It's not a matter of, hey, can I isolate the quads to make them grow? Right? This works great. It should be, can I stretch the tricep? Can I stretch the quads under load? Can I stretch the muscle under load? Okay? And that's what's going to make a muscle bigger. Do you think your quads care? Do you think they really care that it's a squat versus whatever else I'm doing? No, all the other muscles do, and those might be growing from it. We get some movement pattern training with the quads themselves. What makes those quads grow? What's our best way to get quads bigger? To stretch the hell out of them at the bottom. Okay? And exercises like that do a good job of that. Back squats, front squats. Now, Could you go do that on a leg press or a hack squat machine? Sure. I don't have a problem with that. Can you do that on a belt squat machine? Yeah. As long as the ranges of motion are there, you can work the muscle the way that you want to work it, go for it. I'm not telling you that any tool is better than another. And I'm not telling you not to do single joint exercises. I'm doing some of them here, right? You see me doing some single joint exercises. What I'm saying is you need to work the muscle through a good range of motion. And we're not always as worried as much about contracting it. I mean, you can if you want. Go off the data, it's still that stretching. It's that stretch loading is really where the real money is for growth. Now, I'm not even telling you every exercise has to do that, right? Because like a deadlift, we're not getting as much. Well, deficit deadlift helps it more though, right? So we come over to that point rather than looking at the deadlift and going, well, it's not isolating anything. Well, no, deadlifts are great for size. They beat you up. And it is a partial. But I mean, you could look at that and say, well, instead of saying, how can I make the hamstrings and the glutes and those primary movers on the deadlift, right? It's great for those muscles, by the way. Of saying, well, maybe I can stretch them a little bit more. Well, that's what standing on a plate helps. So instead of trying to figure out how can I isolate it, it's like, can I figure out how can I work it harder? Same here with my benching. Touching the chest, pausing, using a pretty wide grip. I don't have a big arch, right? Instead of saying, how can I try to isolate the pecs? It's like, well, how can I stretch the pecs? How can I stretch them? It's not isolating them. I mean, triceps are still going to grow from this. Delts are going to grow. Same when I do the incline bench, right? Let's chase some range of motion. And when we say range of motion, we mean range of motion at the joint level, not always range of motion of the bar. Right? Can we put those joints into deeper joint angles? Well, that's how we get bigger. Okay, that's how we gain muscle. Now, this row I'm doing here, maybe not so much, right? But can be turn those elbows, stretch those lats right before you pull it off the floor. It'll help. But even then. Come over and say, does every exercise have to stretch everything as much as possible? No. As long as some of them do, you're in a good place. Throw some pull-ups in with that, though, some dead hang pull-ups in with those rows. And now we've got a money maker. Build some big lats. Do you have to isolate them to do it? No, of course not. Of course not. Not necessary. It's never been necessary. All right, guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.